In the mountains of Lebanon, in the spring of 1899, a group of monks stood around an open grave. They had not come to bury anyone, they had come to dig one up. For months, a strange light had been seen hovering over the tomb of a hermit who had died the previous Christmas Eve. Pilgrims reported it, the monks dismissed it. Then they came to see for themselves. The body they lifted from the mud had been buried for 4 months, in a grave so flooded by winter rain that the coffin had been sitting in water and earth. It should have been ruined. Instead, it was intact, flexible, and it was bleeding a strange fluid that would not stop for the next 67 years. This is sign of contradiction. His name was Youssef Antoun Makhlouf. He was born on the 8th of May, 1828, in Bekar Kafra, the highest village in Lebanon, a place of thin air and hard stone. His father was a mule driver who died when Youssef was 3, worked to death hauling goods for the Turkish army. His mother remarried. The boy grew up poor, tending the family's small herd on the mountainside, walking each day to a grotto where he prayed alone. At 23, he left. He walked away from his family without telling them and entered the Monastery of Saint Maron at Annaya. He took the name Charbel after a 2nd century martyr. He became a priest. And then, in 1875, he did something even most monks never do. He received permission to leave the monastery for the hermitage above it, a bare stone dwelling higher up the mountain, where he would spend the last 23 years of his life in silence, fasting, and manual labor. He slept on the floor. He ate once a day. He owned almost nothing. On the 16th of December, 1898, while celebrating Mass, he suffered a stroke, collapsing as he held the Eucharist above his head. He died 8 days later, on Christmas Eve. He was 70 years old, and that is when his story truly begins. He was buried without a coffin, as was the custom of his order, wrapped in simple cloth, laid directly in the earth of the monastery cemetery. The winter that followed was brutal. Rain turned the cemetery to mud. Witnesses later said the grave was so flooded that the body was effectively submerged, floating in a mixture of water and soil. And then the light came. For 45 nights, according to the monastery's accounts, a glow was seen over his grave. Pilgrims began to gather. The monastic authorities, reluctant, finally agreed to exhume the body to put the rumors to rest. What they found did not rest the rumors, it multiplied them. The body was whole, the flesh had not corrupted, and when they moved it, it was supple, the limbs still flexible, as though he had died hours before, not months. They cleaned him, changed his burial garments, and placed him in a new tomb inside the monastery. Within days, the garments were soaked. The body was exuding a fluid described as a mixture of blood and a clear, oily serum. They changed the clothes, the fluid returned. They changed them again. It would keep returning for 67 years. Understand what was happening, because it has no easy explanation. A body buried in flooded ground should decompose faster, not slower. Water accelerates decay. Yet this body had resisted it, and more than resisted it, it was actively producing a liquid, continuously, for decades. The monks tried to stop it. They opened the tomb repeatedly over the following years to change the clothing, which was soaked through as often as twice a week in some periods. They tried different burial materials. The exhumation continued regardless. In 1927, 29 years after his death, the church conducted a formal examination. Doctors and monastic authorities opened the tomb. The body remained intact and flexible. They documented it, sealed it in a new coffin reinforced against moisture, and placed it behind a wall. In 1950, pilgrims again noticed liquid seeping from the tomb, this time from a sealed coffin behind a wall. It was opened once more, now in the presence of an official commission and certified physicians. They verified the body's condition and wrote a formal medical report, which they placed in a box inside the coffin. That exhumation in 1950 was recorded on film. The body, more than 50 years after death, in a rusted coffin, still had the appearance of a man who was merely sleeping. The fluid was not merely a curiosity. From the beginning, pilgrims collected it, and reports of healing followed. The Church, as it always does, moved slowly and demanded evidence. When the cause for canonization advanced, 3 healings were selected, investigated under canonical inquiry, and ultimately accepted by Rome. The first, Iskandar Naum Obeid, a blacksmith from Baghdad. A workshop accident had destroyed the pupil of one eye. A physician, Dr. Salhab, documented the damage, and specialists in Beirut recommended the eye be removed to protect the other. Obeid refused. He prayed. He kept vigil at Charbel's tomb. According to the canonical inquiry, which gathered the testimony of his entire village, his sight returned to the eye the doctors had declared destroyed. The second, Sister Maria Abel Kamari, a nun of the Sacred Hearts, healed of an illness her community documented. Her case with Obeid's was accepted for Charbel's beatification in 1965. The third, and the one required for canonization, Mariam Awad of Hamana. She had undergone 3 surgeries between 1963 and 1965 for cancer, in her stomach, her intestines, and her neck. By 1967, the disease had spread, and her condition was considered terminal. Her family brought her to Annaya. She prayed at the tomb and was anointed with the oil. The following morning, according to the medical follow-up accepted by the Congregation for the Causes of Saints, every trace of the cancer was gone. On these, Rome declared him a saint. But the most famous healing attributed to Charbel is not one of the 3 Rome approved. It happened later, in 1993, and this channel will tell it to you exactly as it is. Powerful, documented by physicians, and never submitted to Rome for formal recognition. Her name was Noad El Shami, a 55-year-old mother of 12 from Mount Lebanon. On the 9th of January 1993, she suffered sudden paralysis down her left side. She was taken to St. Maritime Hospital in Jubail. 3 physicians examined her, Dr. Joseph Shami, Dr. Antoine Nachakian, and Dr. Majid Shami. Their diagnosis? Hemiplegia, caused by the blockage of the arteries feeding her brain, 80% on the left, 70% on the right. Their conclusion was blunt. There was no medicine that would cure her. At best, they might one day attempt surgery to replace the blocked arteries. Her son traveled to Charbel's hermitage and brought back oil and soil from the tomb. Her family anointed her. On the night of the 22nd of January, she dreamed that 2 monks stood at her bed. One placed his hands on her neck and cut into it, while the other held her. She woke. She could move. The paralysis was gone. And on both sides of her neck were 2 fresh surgical incisions, wounds she had not had when she fell asleep, scars that remained visible for the rest of her life. Noad El Shami lived another 32 years, receiving pilgrims at her home telling her story. She died in May of 2025. Her medical records were published. Judge them as you will. Now this channel does not flinch, so let us be precise about what is proven and what is not. The 3 miracles Rome accepted were examined under the Church's canonical process, but that process is theological, not a modern, double-blind, clinical trial. The evidence is testimony, medical documentation of the era, and ecclesiastical inquiry. Believers and skeptics weigh that differently and honestly. The Noad El Shami case has published medical records and named physicians, but it rests on a dream, and it was never submitted for Vatican scrutiny. It is a testimony, not a ratified miracle. We present it as exactly that. And the incorruption itself? Here is the part most channels leave out. Saint Charbel is no longer incorrupt. The body that resisted decay for 67 years began, in 1965, to finally decompose. By the time of a later exhumation, only the skeleton remained. Father Joseph Mahfouz, the postulator of his cause, certified that in 1965 the body was still intact. And it was precisely after that point that nature, at last, took its course. The Church recorded this plainly. It did not hide the decay. It did not claim a permanence that was not there. 67 years is not forever, but 67 years is a very long time to explain away. So what survives? Not a body that lasts forever. That body is bones now, and the Church says so. Not a laboratory verdict that no illness could ever remit on its own. Medicine is humbler than that, and so should we be. What survives is a poor mountain hermit who owned nothing, spoke almost nothing, and asked for nothing, and whose grave for 67 years would not behave the way graves are supposed to behave. What survives is a woman who fell asleep paralyzed and woke with surgical scars no surgeon had made. What survives is a fluid that flowed from dead flesh for longer than most people live. And what survives is a monk who, in life and in death, drew Christians, Muslims, and Druze to the same mountain, to kneel at the same tomb. None of it is proof you can hold in your hand, but it is a sign, and signs are meant to be read.